Okay, welcome everybody. Hi, hi, hi. Happy Friday and welcome to our first OFAR webinar of this OFAR year. As we know, your OFAR course has begun. That more formal facilitated learning environment is underway, and that's the real core learning experience to start off the OFAR program. In addition, throughout the year, we host a whole series of webinars to complement and deepen and expand upon what you are learning in the course. So welcome to our first one of the new year, Decolonizing Your Syllabus. Next slide, please. Here's a quick overview of the agenda today. I'm just going to offer a few reminders about what's happening this fall. Then we'll focus our attention on our guest speakers today, speaking about decolonizing your syllabus. And then towards the end, Laura will share some housekeeping items with us. So we expect to end right at the top of the hour at 1 o'clock. Okay, next slide, please, Laura. First of all, a big thank you to everybody who makes this happen. I'm James Galapagos-Clyde, co-director with Laura Dunn here, co-director. And then you see it takes a lot of folks to actually make this happen. Liz Yada from CCCOER, Joy, Kim, and Marites, whom you're all getting to know inside the course. And then, of course, our whole team of advisory coaches. And hopefully you have already connected with your coach and you are continuing to connect with your coach during the course. Thanks to everybody. Next slide. Thank you, Laura. Here's a quick overview of what's happening this fall. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see a list of webinars this fall. Please note we have a mix of optional and required webinars. For example, next Friday, there's a webinar on searching, remixing, licensing OER. That's a workshop with staff from College of the Canyons. That's optional because we know some of you might have similar support at your own college. You might have been through a lot of training on OER, fantastic. So if that's not the case and you want to gain some new knowledge, feel free to drop into that webinar. But the webinar after that, November 1st, action plans and projects, that will feature past OFAR participants speaking about and sharing with you what they did for their projects. So that will be super helpful for you to hear from past OFAR participants and so on. You see the dates here. And also on the topic of OER, if you need some help searching for OER or formatting, et cetera, you can contact the OER team here at College of the Canyons. It's on the right-hand side of the screen. Next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. And you can go to this bit.ly or take a photo of the QR code to find the fall calendar, which is also posted inside the course. So we're trying to, follow the best practices of sharing information, make it available in many different ways, many different locations. And next slide, please. Well, with that, we are on to our main topic of the day, decolonizing your syllabus. So thank you so much to Luis Guerrero and Hosna Sadat Ahadi, both from Palomar College. They have shared this similar content with OFAR in the past. We're so thrilled that they're able to find the time to make it again. And a proud point for us is that Hosna is one of our OFAR coaches, and she was a completer, I think, of the very first year of OFAR. So she's become well integrated into our leadership team, and we're so pleased that she's a core part of the OFAR team. So with that, we're going to stop sharing and then turn it over to Hosna and Luis to take it away from here.
All right, thank you, everybody. I just want to make sure, can people see my slides just to make sure that?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So given that we were already introduced, I think we're going to bypass this slide. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. The first thing that we want to do to open up today is doing our land acknowledgement. I know that, and we understand that many of you might be joining us from different locations across the state. So we might be reading the local Palomar land acknowledgement where Hosna and myself find ourselves, but we're going to do a mini activity. So the resilience and the continued presence of the Pacom Yuwinchu, Lueso, Kumeyai, Ipai, Diegueño, and the Kupanguyenchum, Cupeño, and the Ivaluetum, Coahuila nations compels Palomar College to take sensitive, respectful actions to engage the lands of its first people with justice and compassion as fellow human beings. Palomar College acknowledges its benefits from the unceded ancestral lands of these sovereign nations and commits to promoting Indigenous knowledge systems and practices in its educational mission. Palomar College pledges to foster a successful learning environment that supports Indigenous students and engages the needs and concerns of the nations who continue to occupy this land. One of the things they wanted to do is, I suspect that many of your colleges might already be connected to different land acknowledgement in your areas. I think that, let me just check the chat. This activates. Hosna just put a link in the chat that we wanted to share, so kind of like an activity. This site is literally the researchers, I think from Canada, made this global native lands people of all over the world where you can literally zoom in at any region, or there's a way that you can type in like a zip code and it can take you directly to it. Now, what you can see is that there's many intersection colors and regions, and we recognize that artificial political borders are not always recognized for the first people. So this can be a very great activity so that you can all put which type of native first people land you currently occupy in the residence that you occupy. So please feel free to put in the chat the people that either you recognize by the land acknowledgement that your college has created, or just type in your zip code in this activity to see and recognize which are some of the native first peoples of the land that we currently occupy. So this could be a fun activity you can do with your students or in your classes. And so we wanted to share that resource. Go back over here. The other thing that we do want to acknowledge and mention is if your college hasn't yet started with this, we're going to put a couple of other links here so that you can start the dialogue within your college. And one of the recommended is to either in your Canvas course, if you can put it in your syllabus, but if you feel that there's too much space in the Canvas course, is a great place to host this information. And so the second link that I put in the chat is for to have more conversations, how to get started with creating from the Native Governance Center within your college. And hopefully you can talk to the right people in your departments and school. Jose.
Thank you, Luis. So we wanted to first kind of define what is decolonization before we begin today. Decolonization involves identifying colonial systems and structures that are in place in education, attempting to eradicate them altogether. This will require OFAR faculty to critically be reflective on their unconscious bias, but also start looking at below the iceberg. Don't just look at what we see, but think about using your critical consciousness to really transform your college campus, but also in your classroom. Decolonization is about dismantling colonial ideologies, racial hierarchy, and hegemony. This work requires folks to listen to their students' lived experiences, the experiences of racial marginality, and creating a call to action for your campus and your classroom to become anti-racist. Decolonization is about elevating the voices that have been historically silenced and marginalized. I state the word historical as we don't want to continue to perpetuate marginalization by using it in present tense. When creating plans for your college and designing your course curriculum, be sure to center the students' lived experiences through using cultural relevant and responsive teaching, the other CRT. Decolonization is about rethinking, reframing, and restructuring education to include liberation and racial equity. Are we teaching to assign grades, or are we teaching to ensure students are self-empowered to learn the curriculum, feel validated, belonging, and feel free from a system of oppression? Decolonization is about building community, being self-reflective on a continuum. That includes for students and for teachers. How are you building community with your students in the classroom is critical, and with the employees at your organization. Are you deeply reflecting on the assignments and presentations you're presenting in your course? And decolonization empowers people by acknowledging the lived experiences of communities of color historically in all aspects of developing curriculum, pedagogy, policies, and praxis. And we can move on to the next slide. We have all seen the image of three people who are watching the ball game. The reality is inequities are in place for our students. Although equality allows students to be given the same delivery of teaching, it is equity that ensures everyone is watching the game at the same height and comprehending your curriculum. And liberation is really decolonizing curriculum by breaking down the fence. And inclusion is when all three people are actually playing the game and not watching it on the sidelines. As a decolonizer and anti-racist educator, you should see beyond this. Remember what is below the iceberg. Those who are watching the game also happen to be racially minoritized in this image, as even with the image of white hegemony is being illustrated. Also, even in the history of Major League Baseball, racial marginality and segregation was practiced. We have to be critically conscious and intentional in creating anti-racist curriculum and pedagogy. The University of Southern California developed a report regarding the syllabus being used as a tool of addressing racial equity by three objectives. Number one, the syllabus is a tool that can define equity in your course, understanding how the syllabus can act as a tool of equity. A syllabus is a tool that introduces the ethos of your class, an official agreement of partnership between a teacher and student. Equity language and statements should further welcome students from all walks of life, especially students of color who have experienced marginality and have been targeted to racism. Number two, the importance of students' phenomenology in your course is including the experience of students of color by promoting a sense of belonging for them, by being intentional with including equity in your course and being inclusive to race, pronouns, sexuality, religion, disability, socioeconomic status, learning comprehension, and more. Also, it's important to deconstruct the centering and representation of white students as the norm. Number three, student-centered syllabus means student success and achievement. Reimagining the syllabus to serve students that are the focal point of who we are serving at our campus and in our classroom. It's imperative to centering cultural relevant, sustaining, and revitalizing pedagogy. And later on, we'll be sharing you with some resources regarding Latson Billings' research on all three research that I just presented. Next slide.
So going back to kind of like the analogy, I think that there's many other visuals that people can implement in regard to equality. We talked about the many limitations that the previous Major League Baseball analogy had. I think that this is a better picture that was created by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, because when you give everybody the same tool, we can see that there might be 3 out of 4 people struggling to achieve it, and most definitely one person, it is not designed for them. And the point is not to highlight just our students with disabilities, but just even tall people, short people can struggle if we just give them the exact same tool for the exact same population without regarding their particular needs. So when we talk about equity and we talk about liberalization, when we talk about decolonizing, is basically trying to dismantle industrialism and standardization, because that has not helped our people. We see them more as, or the system sees them more as student ID and just numbers than actual a person, a human being behind them. And that's what we're trying to change, where it does take effort to design new systems like a hand-cranked bicycle so that you can have other type of mobilities. So we need to dismantle the standard and status quo so that we can actually look at the human beings that are entering our classrooms. Part of what we do in the community colleges, in contrast to maybe our partners in other higher education systems, is we accept 100% of the students that reaches our classes, and therefore we need to address their needs and serve them the best that we can. So one size does not fit all.
The foundation and history of teaching, curriculum, and pedagogy were framed with a colonized approach and logic. What this means is that academia has become based on white hegemony, power, hierarchy, disregarding the perspectives and lived experiences of communities of color. The perpetuation of white supremacy is practiced when white racial identity is centered as a norm in education. Intersectional identities such as race, economics, economic standing, pronouns, sexuality, disability, immigration status, English language learner, first-generation scholarship increases the need for teaching to become decolonized, equity-focused, student-centered, and anti-racist. We need to dismantle systemic and structural racism to see students of color thrive academically and prevent marginalization from continuing in the classroom. To gain a holistic perspective, Luis and I both looked at various scholarly research that provides diverse methods to construct a decolonized and equity-minded core syllabus and teaching. Reflection about this work is continuous and not an overnight process. As you can see in this image, it has been more than 60 years since civil rights, and we are still protesting and standing against racism today. So I wanted to go ahead, you all will have access to an example. Now, just keep in mind, Luis and I are still novice. We're continuously learning. We are not experts when it comes to decolonizing our syllabus and us having a perfect syllabus. This is like a work in progress, but we do want to share examples with you all so that as you're creating your decolonized syllabus, let's just say for an action plan for OFAR, you have something tangible to work with. So Luis, if you can go ahead and click on my syllabus, and even this morning, I sent a new copy of my syllabus to Luis saying, can you please upload this onto our resource page? So as of today, I even made some changes on my syllabus. So you can see that this work is on a continuum. But I wanted to share a couple things with you all. So let's go ahead and, I don't know, yeah, perfect, okay, thank you. So as you can see at the very top, Luis, if you could just go on the very top, the most important thing for me is my name. Because I've been told to anglicize my name all throughout my life, and I refuse to. So I had to use a pronunciation of my name so my students can say my name correctly. And that's honoring my ancestors, it's honoring who I am, my identity. And I do the same thing for my students too, so that I can honor their names and how they want to be called upon. There's an introduction of who I am. I humanize my classroom by saying I'm a community college graduate. I'm also an immigrant to this country. I talk about my lived experiences of who I am being system impacted, so that the students that I'm working with, they understand that they can see themselves in me as well. And I can share my experiences with them. So if you scroll down, Luis. Yeah, keep scrolling down. So I have access to like all the information that they need. Obviously, we want to make sure that students are not going on a scavenger hunt across your campuses to try to locate different programs and resources. We want to make sure that all of that is elucidated onto the core syllabus. So obviously, I'm a zero textbook cost instructor after joining OFAR several years ago. Some of you might be low cost, but just keep in mind, I'll share the outcome of being a zero text or low cost instructor a little bit later. But if you scroll down, you could also see my grade point system. Right now, it's at the percentage, but on Canvas, I have it as a 5-point scale. And I've been using graded equity teaching in my Canvas, which allows students who have missed assignment to still maintain in this class with good academic standing, and finding ways of how to support them so they are learning, not necessarily using punitive markers of, okay, you're failing this class after one assignment being missed. So if you scroll down, Luis, there's information about evaluation of work. You can scroll down more. Okay, and like, look, even having images is so important. I have a Zoom background right now, but if you ever, Palomar, come and see me in my office. I have a lot of affirmations all around my office. I have a lot of stickers, even on my hydro flasks, to let students know that these are safe and brave spaces where they can feel for them, they can be themselves, and they know that my positionality of who I am to support them and to open my office and open my arms with love and validation for them so that they see themselves in my classroom. So having images is important because for a lot of students, they need to just see that to understand who your position, what your positionality is. Okay, just scroll down, Luis. And then here, I talk about various housing and food insecurities, academic accommodations, and then behavioral. We offer therapy on campus. So a lot of the students that I work with are rising scholars. So we take advantage of the therapy that's available on campus as well. There's some intergenerational trauma that my students experience. So it's really important. And the reason why I know this is because I do an intake form with my students in the first week of the semester. So it's really important to really understand who your students are so that as you're working on your syllabus every semester, you're reflecting some of these different information onto your syllabus so that they have access to it. Scroll down, Louise. And then I think for me, the most important part is the student conduct and academic integrity. Now with AI, AI can be used in so many different ways. But as you know, with Canvas, for those of you who are using Canvas, it's you got the copy leaks checker, right? And automatically you see 70%, 80% copied from an online source. It's so easy for us to tell students, I'm going to report you and I'm going to make sure that you get a 0 and you plagiarized. That language is very scary for a lot of our students, especially students who are undocumented or have come through mass incarceration. It's very important that we educate our students what is student conduct, what is academic integrity, and how to avoid it. So even though I have this language that is not as punitive as, my previous syllabus, I still sit down with the students and I talk to them and I say, look, I noticed that copy leaks flagged out 50% of your work. What's going on? Walk me through it. And let's talk about APA 7 referencing. And this is how you would reference this direct quote. And so just taking the time to sit with them and communicating this with them as opposed to, writing punitive language that's very scary. A lot of students already feel like they're unwelcomed in your course. So if you have to make reference to certain websites, according to your college or your academic senate has demanded that you have to put something on your syllabus, you can always put the hyperlink on there, but the language of how you construct your syllabus, it's all down to you. That's where our academic freedom comes in. So if you scroll down, Louise, I also mentioned what does respect mean, how to avoid microaggressions. I have developed community agreements, and this is after joining OFAR. So OFAR actually helps me with this segment of developing community agreements. I didn't develop them, my students did. So it was a collective process for the students and I to talk about what is it that we want to come into this space. When we do discussion posts, what is it that we want to include? The Learning Pact, actually, I got inspired by Jamie's class on the @ONE training that we did a few years ago. And so the Learning Pact, if you scroll down, talks about what do you expect from me and what do I expect from you? And this could also be, collectively written with you and your students. And so they understand what is their position in this classroom and what is expected from them and letting them know that it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn. Scroll down. And then obviously we have all these different quotations. I tend to quote Tupac a lot, and Luis always quotes, is it Snoop Dogg? So we're always like West Coast rappers, we say, but sometimes we use globalized individuals as well, so that they are familiar with different people from all over the world. So that's another aspect of it. But like I said, my syllabus is a continuum. It's always being changed. But what's important is that you're being more reflective. And so you could stop sharing the syllabus and go back to the PowerPoint, Luis. I just wanted to share one more thing. So I began teaching in 2009. And when I first taught, I taught in England. And my first day on the job, I said, I don't know how to write a syllabus. I have no clue where to even begin. And it was 2 days before I began teaching. And so I asked one of my colleagues, hey, did you teach this class? He goes, yeah. I'm like, okay, let me have a look at your syllabus. I looked at his syllabus. I'm not kidding you. I literally copied and pasted and I put my name on it and I passed it out to students because that was the easiest way to get through it in the 2 days that I had. The students complied with my syllabus. We were all like, even saying my syllabus. That is a very hegemony language that I was using. And not only that, I didn't put any critical thought of my syllabus. So over the years, I started going from my syllabus to our syllabus, using our language, and even changing that, dismantling that language that I was using. Over time, I had students contribute to critiquing my syllabus. So even at one point after 5-year mark of teaching, I had my old syllabus and then I had my new syllabus, and I took my name off and I took the subject matter off. And I told the students, which syllabus do you prefer? And they're like, whoever syllabus is on the left, I never want to take their class. And I had to admit that that was my syllabus when I first started teaching. So to hear that was not easy, but it was necessary for me to be reflective as an instructor, as an anti-racist instructor, to create greater liberation for my students. My syllabus is not just for me, it's for my students. I should not be looking at it as, oh, it's a legal binding document in case I need to CYA. It should be something more of, this is going to be beneficial for the students to be able to grow and feel self-empowered and feel a sense of community within my classroom. Okay, I think I'm done. Please, the next slide. Yeah.
So one of the things that we constantly notice, and it has to do that back in 2021, I think we had a cohort of people in our college who went through the Decolonizing the Syllabus, funded by some Guided Pathways money. And one of the things that we noticed the most is that many people were still using punitive language. And I think that it's one of the most things that we need to kind of like address in terms of philosophy. So we have to be very mindful that many of our students have trauma and past experience. Many of you learn or have taken training for trauma-informed pedagogy. And in that, we know that our students not only have traumas from past experience, be it PTSD from military service or other types of PTSD, everybody had many effects, mostly negative and or otherwise, through the pandemic that we all lived through. And so we need to recognize that our students, even ourselves, bring past experience and sometimes trauma. And therefore, sometimes words like drop, late, reporting, penalty, violation are trigger words for students. Maybe the word violation means different for a person that has been sexually assaulted, or a person that you're going to be reported might be meaning something different if the person is a previously incarcerated student. So we have to be very careful with the words that we use in our syllabus. It must not be punitive nor deficit thinking. They can be triggers for students, and sometimes we need to view it through a different lens so that we don't affect our students more or make them not continue in your class. Sometimes perseverance and completion rates have to do with how the students feel in your classrooms, not just the difficulty of your content. I know that you've heard how Hosna explained her counseling course. I teach math, and I'm going to give you kind of like a STEM perspective of infusing our philosophy in my math class in a few moments. But we also have to be mindful that we have undocumented students in our classrooms, dreamers, or formerly incarcerated students, veterans, refugees, LGBTQ+, adult learners, current and former foster youth, American Indian Alaska Native students, etc. So there might be students that we see in your classroom that have difficulty focusing, the difficulty attending or retaining in your classroom, tendency to miss a lot of classes, anxiety about deadlines, exams, group work, or public speaking, withdraw and or are isolated. And then maybe the language that you use in your class, be it in Canvas, be it in your syllabus, and when you give instructions, play a lot of role in that. So the language that we choose to use matters. We need to question the words in the syllabus and class content as a whole. To decolonize, we need to bring our student experience and consider how the language that we use either overtly or subconsciously is affecting them in our classrooms. Our classrooms should be brave spaces and practice cultural humility, humanizing and not propagating colonial views or policies. Many times we hear faculty, especially part-time faculty, my dean told me to put such and such sentence because I need to protect myself or protect the school. What about protecting our student? And so if you truly want to be student-centered, you need to view it through the student lens. And therefore, nobody is saying that write something that goes against your policies and procedures that your district has established. That is not the case. But how can we serve best our students within the policies? Because what do you prefer to be? Compliant or compassionate? And I think that we need to allow, many of us needed a little more compassion during the pandemic. I think that we need to extend our students way more compassion, quote unquote, coming out of the pandemic. So one of the things that we want to mention is the language that you use, for example, in my class, math, or many STEM classes, you can use language like mistakes are expected and they are respected. Many times mistakes are a learning opportunity. It is not simply a way of saying, oh, you don't know yet. Go back to a previous lower class to gain that knowledge and then come back to me when you learn that knowledge. That is very colonial view. You should be able to help and rise and increase whatever capacity the student currently has so that it reaches their full potential. So this is one way that you can kind of like inject welcoming language without removing the policies that you have in your classrooms. This is taken from Herring's and Bridges' effects on the syllabus tone, students' perspective on instruction and course instruction and the course, meaning you need to avoid deficit thinking and punitive language, include more validating, welcoming, engaging, and provide a sense of belonging to the students. If you have a specific issue that you want to address, then you can still convey your policies in a humanized, student-centered viewpoint. And I'll let you kind of like view and compare. So instead of saying that you will be dropped and that you are going to be punished and you will get points deducted, you will be, you're basically telling students what they shouldn't do, but instead of what should they do. And so many times you can say, if you have circumstances that prevent you from attending class, talk to me. Maybe we can find a way for you to catch up, and we're going to talk about different grading policies and other perspectives. But as you can see, same content, and it's just a language that you use to your students that can change. So again, do you want to be an instructor that is viewed more on compliance or on compassion? And I rather tend to say be more of the compassion type. So this is I'm sorry, I apologize. I should have shown the left-hand side first. I changed something and I forgot to update it. I am not ashamed to say that when I first started teaching in 2010, straight out of grad school, my syllabus was 2-page, double-sided, and that's it. The most compact, it was, before being decolonizing, I was geared toward the concise, the short, like 1 page if possible, bare bone information, short and sweet, not inviting, dry, bleak, monochrome, geared toward the professional. I was faculty-centered, trying to protect myself instead of being student-centered. I did use punitive and unwelcoming language. I was thinking more about rigor than kind of like what would the student need in order to reach the content that we're learning together. A syllabus should not be considered as a contract. The syllabus should be a living document which reflects the experience, emotion, philosophies, and goals you bring to a particular course. It is your declaration of values that underpins both the plan and the promise, the why that undergirds the what. It provides information about the class expectation, and the support services provided to all students, especially the ones that you provide to achieve every student's success. This also sets the tone for your class, so make it be the best first impression possible. I had to learn to humanize my language. I had to think about metacognition, affirmations. I'm going to show my syllabus in a few moments. I tell my students that I am their biggest supporter and I am personally invested in their success. I want them to help me help them. I do make them aware of the time commitments because teaching transfer level math classes is a high burden, but we need to be there for them and be more a guide on the side than just being the sage on the stage. I did have to avoid including punitive language, especially in academic integrity, and replace it with more restorative practices. What do you prefer more the student to do? Just get a 0 or not a bad grade on an assignment, or find the ways of making the student do the assignment even if it's late and be able to gain the knowledge that you intend with the assignment at hand. So again, more restorative practices. Invite them back, invite them in, instead of simply marginalizing them and putting academic standards as like the divisors. Moreover, we need to recognize that many of our students bring different academic standards from different cultures. In many other cultures, what some people might consider as copying or plagiarism is simply sharing, and they share as a culture information in different ways that we in Western views tend to assimilate and think about copyright and ownership of certain things, and even the notion of ownership has very much colonial views. So we need to be mindful of that. The other thing is, don't let the negative experience be poison in your class. Just because you had one incidence of egregious, somebody did bring some illegal thing to cheat it and overtly, one time 10 years ago, you're poisoning 99% of your students on a rare occurrence that happens once every 10 or 20 years in your career. So we have to be mindful, how do we address and how do we set them up for success? You can still make the information be accessible, and you need to be making the information be alt text with alt text and pictures, and organize them with headers and many other things about accessibility. So I'm going to share my syllabus. That's what I meant to say. My syllabus is a Google Doc. I like the reason that it's a Google Doc for many reasons. One, it looks like a website. I embed the full Google Doc inside of Canvas in a native way. If you don't know how to embed websites or Google Docs in Canvas, there's many resources for that. Moreover, somebody put in the chat a few moments ago about creating a liquid syllabus. My Google Doc can be considered a liquid syllabus for the following manner. Liquid syllabus, one of its most precious tenet is being mobile friendly in any type of device that your student access, and most of our students sometimes do all of their homework and assignments on their phone, so it's easily accessible by mobile phone if you structure it the right way by headers and many other things that you have to be mindful of that. So similar to Hostess, I put my information. I use this tool that is the Name Coach, that all of you have the free tool of creating Name Coach, where you can record your name. I know that right now I'm not sharing audio, but if you can create your native pronunciation of your name by a Name Coach badge. We have more information here, similar to Hostnas. I give it the information with regard to humanizing and give it my life story. Many times people think that, oh, you have masters, oh, you have doctors, that you're a perfect student. That is not the case. I tell my students, I had to retake multiple times math undergraduate courses, and even in my graduate master course, I had to repeat courses. It doesn't mean that I never got my advanced degree. Also, I tell them that I had to cross an international border. I went all up to high school in Tijuana, Mexico, and I had to cross the international border for 5 years to get my degree at UCSD. And I had to spend 3+ hours each way to cross and get to my schools. So I know that this is the old saying, oh, I have walked 10 miles to go to school, but I want to share that education was my liberation, was my way of getting out of my socioeconomical status that I lived through in my home. And so this can be for them, similar to Hostnas, affirmations, positive imagery, believing in themselves. I let them know that I am invested and I'm the biggest supporter of them, and I want all of them to succeed. Much more information for you to use. I just do want to address about academic integrity. It is important, but there are some studies, especially because English is not my first language, that multilingual learners are penalized more often because of biases with AI checkers. So be conscious of that if you choose to use AI checkers. I'm in the opposite spectrum, that I do believe that AI can elevate remedy some of the learning opportunity gaps that some of the students have had. And so I've actually partnered with the Chancellor's Office. They have a pilot program with NETIR. And if you've gotten some information from them, there's a pilot program that is going to be extended for next year to have 150 faculty across the state connected with AI. We're test piloting it, but I do mention to my students that I need them to use AI the right and ethical way. And I know there's a lot of ethical and environmental concerns about AI. We can talk about that later. And just making sure that I offer as much guidance and support for my students. I don't even assume anything. I even tell them what is the definition of mathematics, because even though the students are taking math classes, they have preconceived notions what mathematics is, and I try to dismantle what it should be so that they have a better experience in what math should be in the class that we're taking today. All right, that is, and again, you can have access to our all of our syllabus by the end of the presentation.
So some of the equity highlights we wanted to share with you all is one, introduction, personalization. Do students know who you are? Consider introducing yourself, race, ethnicity, pronoun, academic experience, cultural identity, and more. As the instructor of the course, and providing an anti-racist, equity-minded messaging to welcome your students. Number two, availability. Are there multiple methods students can contact you? And is there flexibility of communication times? You may also want to discuss with your department on multiple days and times course offerings should be available for students who work and have greater responsibilities. Number three, equitizing teaching. What books, articles, and readings have been intentionally selected in your course? Are your course resources inclusive to race, socioeconomic standing, pronoun, sexuality, disability, immigration status, English language learner, first generation, college students, and more? Number four, explicit language. Is there explicit language about the intolerance of micro and macro aggressions and racist remarks, actions, and behaviors in the course clearly elucidated? Also, is it important? It's important not to state that the word minority students, as communities of color represent the majority, especially in the state of California, we are the majority. So using the word minority is actually it's a hegemonic word, and it's used by colonial hegemony to further infuriate communities of color. So deficit language should be challenged, and it's critical for faculty to engage in this meaningful work. Number five, early alert. Is there messaging regarding you as a faculty member to alert learners if they are not participating or if they are not attending your class, either synchronously or asynchronously? The importance of early alert has been proven to support students towards retention and course and degree completion. Number six, supportive teaching. Are mistakes expected, respected, and used to elevate students' understanding of your subject matter? Do you offer opportunities for retaking missed or late work? What opportunities are there for students to catch up if they are behind due to technological barriers or other personal deterrents? Number seven, language and policy. Language about policy. Is the language around policy and expectations of students supportive and not punitive or deficit thinking? Number eight, resources. Does your course syllabus provide information regarding housing and food insecurities, internships, career opportunities, along with all other on and off campus resources that benefit socioeconomically disadvantaged students? Number nine, Canvas course. Is your Canvas course accessible, clear, inclusive, welcoming, and supportive for all learners to follow despite the modality of asynchronous or synchronous teaching? Number 10, positive messaging and affirmations. Are there positive messages and affirmations displayed in your course syllabus, in your Canvas, but also in your classroom to further validate and provide a greater sense of belonging for students of color in the course? Do the images and videos in the course showcase diversity and representation of students we serve? And the last one is pronoun guides. If your college does not have a pronoun guide, this is where we're calling attention to all of our activists in the OFAR community. You need to have a pronoun guide at your institution. So we are providing examples of our pronoun guide. I was part of that project, and it's important that we begin implementing that, especially when you're working with students in your classroom on Canvas, especially your colleagues too. And so really using your pronoun usage in all aspects of Zoom, your emails, your meeting space, I think these are great equity highlights to consider.
One of the things that we do want to mention is in terms of tools, we hope that you address other non-standard ways of grading. Even the notion of the bell curve or standard grading has some issues based upon industrialization and colonialisms. So there's many resources for you to be able to take in. Oh, sorry. some colleges have done book clubs on the Grading for Equity book from Joe Feldham. There's the Ungrading book from Susan Bloom. Some instructors do labor-based or contact grading. There's other types of grading called grading for growth, specification grading. So regardless of the terminology or the precise approach, there's multiple ways of grading students so that it's not simply on the 0 to 100% scale, because mathematically, if a student receives a 0 in assignments and trying to make up or recover after that assignment in the rest of the semester is almost impossible, and also it is demoralizing. So try finding alternate ways, like what is most important for you, students to retain the information and be able to prove it at a certain stage in your semester, or that at the first or second week of the semester, if they don't have it, they lose it, then they can continue with their content. That is not the case. Some practices might be that you the later part of the semester has higher weight because the students have matured and have assimilated and remedied many of the gaps that they might have had from the beginning, or many other practices as doing the GPA point grading, the standard space grading, and many other practices. So we're advocating so that you introspect yourself and try to investigate why are the reasons that you're using the grading scheme that you have. It's just because somebody gave it to you, or you're really doing student-centered grading practices. We're going to do a very small poll and activity. I'm gonna just switch here. If you have your phone, you can do the QR code here. If you don't have your phone, I'm gonna drop a link on the chat, and you can join via a different window on your computer, so be it on your phone. Click on the link on the chat or on your phone, go to the QR code, or just go to menti.com, and the instructions are going to appear in the top. Let me just go to the first slide. Type in a word that comes to your mind after learning about decolonizing. So if you go to menti.com,
I needed to go grab my phone. I need that little QR code a little bit.
or just open a new website, a new browser website in your phone. Go to menti.com and then type in this code in the top.
Okay, thank you.
Again, this is another practice that you can do in your classes to make the be interactive student interaction. We're going to showcase about like 3 different slides of different type of interactions, so you can co-create knowledge. This is another thing that you can do in your classes to make them be more engaging. I'm going to share the link again in the chat. Give me 1 second. Let me copy it while people are still responding. The link in the chat is just if you're using your computer. If you're joining us via cell phone, go to menti.com and use code 27977096. It will always show up in the top. All right. Thank you everybody for sharing your responses. And this will be continue to be generated. I'm going to change to the next one. This is locate, put a little dot in the location or where you feel in the becoming an anti-racism, different zones. Are you in the fear zone? Are you in the learning zone? Are you in the growing zone? And you can also put it vertically up and down. It doesn't have to be all on the horizontal axis. So drag the little dot on whichever section of the spheres you feel that you locate. This is totally anonymous. So again, when you're working with your students, you can see how this is. And as you can see, we can't all expect to be in the same place. It's a learning journey. And so do not penalize or chastise yourself just because you're not, quote unquote, at the farthest extreme. We're all learning and we're constantly evolving. And I would not be surprised that there's going to be eventually a sphere of enlightenment beyond this. All right. The last one that we're going to be working on together is we have defined many terminology. You're going to do a check mark the ones that you have implemented in your classes already. So if you know the terminology and we've defined most of them, use it. And if there's a terminology you're unaware of or we haven't defined fully and completely, then you're feel free to leave blank. Again, I teach math in a stats class. This is great response because you're going to notice about clustering and many other pieces of information where you can see saturation occurrent in certain locations, but then you can also call out why do we have underrepresented in other areas, and that's where you can evaluate where should you go or need to be. All right, we're going to be mindful of our time, and I appreciate everybody for you to join. There's an extra question, but we're not going to have time to develop it right now. But hopefully you can see interactive way that you can talk with data and information with your students. And just one slide. We're gonna share a resource. Let me just mention that we're gonna share some resources. Beyond the slides, we're gonna share a handout of resources so you can extend. With that, where's it? Right, my bad. And with that, we thank you for your time and questions.
That was fantastic. Thank you guys. Boy, we could be here all day. I think we could all stay here all day learning. We're coming up close to the top of the hour, but we do want to have an opportunity for questions or comments from everybody in the audience.
There were a few questions on resources throughout the talk today about, the AI checker, sharing your intake form, links for the name coach, and a lot of those links were dropped in the chat. Are those also going to be available on the slideshow?
Yes, we can provide that as well. And then Luis, also the response on the Mentimeter, can we also share that with Laura and James?
Yes. We can most definitely, when send out to them, we can send out the information shared from Mentimeter and the other resources that we have.
Yeah, there's a lot of slides we didn't get to, given the sake of time, but we wanted to also share like a reading list that a lot of faculty from different disciplines may want to read and apply if they haven't already, on how to create anti-racism teaching, pedagogy, and praxis. So we'll be more than happy to share that resource guide, and that resource guide gets updated every year. So as Luis and I share Decolonizing the Syllabus, we actually learn a lot from other faculty across the US. So they share a lot of their examples with us, and we share with other faculty across the state.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I believe that you both wrote an article for the Academic Senate rostrum a few years ago on this topic. Maybe you could drop a link to that article in the chat. Maybe folks here saw that article in the past, and now they're in a webinar with you all. So that's cool.
Yeah, and if you're on the OFAR Canvas, you can click on my profile, and I've also linked those articles that I've co-written with other faculty across the state for Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. But that guide, Luis and I, when we started this work, it came from a CRT book club. And he goes, what are we going to do next? What's the action? I said, no, we're just going to eat cookies and talk about CRT. And he goes, no, there's got to be an action. And actually, Luis was the one who mentioned, let's do Decolonizing the Syllabus. And it became an entity of its own. And across the US, we've been invited to come and present and talk about what decolonization looks like. And oftentimes, it wasn't about what we read. It was about doing that self-reflexivity at home to think about how the education system has othered us and has made us feel less than or marginalized us on the sidelines, and really look at, do we want to perpetuate this cyclical cycle of racism for our students? Like, we got to really be intentional with not just saying DEIAA, but actually actioning it. Don't just talk about land acknowledgements, support our ethnic studies. We have to find ways to really action what the work that we're doing, other than just changing our syllabus. It's more than just changing our syllabus. It's decolonizing our mind. It's decolonizing our world. And I think that this work requires you to do that reflective practice on a continuum.
Great, thank you.
Haley, you had a question?
Haley,
Yeah,
Haley's got a
we have
question.
time for one question. So Haley, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you for all the information. When we were at the very beginning talking about land acknowledgement, one of you said that you can do something like as an activity with your students. I'm just wondering what that looks like, or like if you've done an activity, and I'm very interested. So I'm just curious what that looks like in your experience.
Well, it depends on which subject area you teach. I teach math. And so when I teach statistics, we can talk about kind of like just geolocation of information, because there's many things in terms of statistics that are kind of like geography bound, like redlining and many other systems of oppression, like incarceration rates and other things. And I think that one of the things that the students don't realize is that we, and I'm talking about Palomar specifically, Palomar in Southern California has, I believe, 7 tribes near the district area that we serve. And what people my students don't recognize is that in Southern California, we are the state that has more recognized federal tribes in the nation. And making those local connections to data points that students, again, there's the typical story of the vanishing Indian, and therefore we need to bring them into the fore and say they haven't vanished, they're still here. And depending where you are regionally in your state, in the state, you can bring that local data and bring this kind of like, hey, wherever you live or have lived in the past, what are the other tribes, so that you can recognize with them. And so those are some ideas that you can extend and explore more.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Louise. We are at 1 minute to the hour right now. And I think people are starting to drop off and get going. And so I don't want to cut any questions off. But I think if you have more questions, if you want to put them up on Canvas for Hasna, or if you want to send them to me and I can forward them to Hasna, I think that would be a great idea. But we do have some other kinds of housekeeping things before everyone jumps off. So I hope that's okay. And I wanted to say a big thank you to Hasna and Louise for all of your hard work, not only for this webinar, but just the work that you're doing every day in your classrooms and outside of your classrooms to make education and just life more equitable. So thank you so much, everyone. Big round of applause for you both. Okay, so I'm gonna jump on over to just a few more slides. Now the boring stuff, but nonetheless important to share with everybody. So if you miss a webinar, and I sent this in an email earlier this week, the webinars are required, but life happens. Sometimes we've got to miss things. So if you can't attend a live session, first of all, let your coach and your team leader know. I usually post the recordings within a couple days. So it's Friday. So those usually show up for you on Monday, and those get shared out. So to watch those, and then put a response or a reflection for the webinar into the required webinar makeup discussion area, which is on the Canvas course, in order to receive credit. And then we will mark that down. Oh, actually, I'm not in present mode. Here we go. All right, and I think some of you are probably wondering about contracts and invoicing. Thank you for signing your contracts. If you have not signed your contract yet, please do sign that contract. Somewhere around next week, you should be receiving an email from QuickBooks or Intuit, which is the company that owns QuickBooks, asking you to complete your W-9. This is a kind of a businessy email, company email, so please check your spam folders. It might go in there. If you've checked your spam folder, you still haven't received it, or you're having a hard time accessing QuickBooks, you may fill out or complete your W-9 through Dropbox. And if that is the case, next week, if you don't receive anything, you can contact me. You can also visit the FAQ section in Canvas for further instructions on how to upload documentation to a secure Dropbox. But before you go there, please wait to receive an email from QuickBooks. Those program FAQs, such as missed webinars or questions about invoicing and billing, can be found here. You can go ahead and scan the QR code, but like all of our slideshows, these will be made available through a Google Drive shared link, which I've already shared with you today via Google Groups. You should have received that. And keep up with us. You can join our mailing list. We don't spam you, I promise. It's very few emails you'll get, but to keep up with OFAR, outside of the OFAR course, some of the fun things that we're up to in the country and in the world. And also, if you are interested in joining CCC OER, Community College Consortium of OER, and you are not already, please join our community email. You can also read our EDI blog posts and student OER impact stories at cccoer.org. Okay, so communications and support. I sent out a link earlier today to several, or to all of you in the 5th year cohort. And some of you have been sending me, give me permission to access this, because you're trying to access it from an email that's different than the institutional email that you provided us with at the beginning of the semester. That's completely okay, but if you would like to use that email, could you please send me an email at lauradunn@oeglobal.org and let me know to update your email. That would be the way to do it, so I can update our Google group with your current email address. Any course-related communications, you can contact your facilitators, your coach, or team lead through the Canvas inbox or help discussion. And again, contracts and invoicing questions should go to me. And if you have any questions about OER support, that is available through College of the Canyon. So questions about finding materials, questions about accessibility or formatting, please email oer@canyons.edu, copying James on that email. And finally, let us know how we did. Please go ahead and scan the QR code. We'd love to know how you liked today's webinar. It always helps us improve. Any feedback